The White House recently released plans to dramatically reduce the federal government's role in the government-sponsored entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Joining me to discuss this is Doug Bibby, President of the National Multi-Housing Council. Doug, obviously this is an issue of prime concern to your membership. Of the three options that were put forth by the government, is there one that you're more in favor of, and can you tell us why?
There are three options. One is total privatization of the housing finance system, which is rather impractical. The second one is just having the federal government serve a backstop purpose for emergencies. That also is rather impractical. So we have landed on the third one, which is access to federal credit at all times through all cycles, but with a price to pay for that privilege of accessing federal credit. So we are in favor of that, and we won't be alone among the groups weighing in on that.
So regarding the rental housing industry, what is the single most important factor that you would urge policymakers to keep in mind as they set about to reform Fannie and Freddie?
Yeah, the single most important thing that policymakers can focus on is the fact that Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's multifamily books of business are platinum. Their serious delinquencies are about half a percent, 50 basis points, versus a serious delinquency rate, for example, for CMBS at about 10%, so 20 times the level. And these books of business have been profitable for the agencies at a time when their single-family business is in total disarray. So I think we've got great models out there. Those books of business, whether it's Fannie Mae's DUS program, its delegated underwriting program, where the seller servicers have a stake in the game. They have the first risk position, first loss position. And Freddie Mac's prior approval program, they both work very, very well. So keep in mind the successes that are out there.
And you bring up, touch on an interesting point. Do you think that a lot of times when this issue gets brought up, the multifamily industry gets either misunderstood or misrepresented as folks and agencies look to address the single-family market?
Yeah, it's an ongoing battle to have people focus on the differences between multifamily and single-family. I'll give you a couple of examples. A very prominent member of Congress who will be at the center of this debate made a comment when I was in his office that he didn't know that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac finance multifamily housing, which was quite an eye-opener for us. It just tells us how hard we have to work to educate policymakers. And then another time we were at Treasury. And by the way, the team at Treasury is just superb. They've got a lot of talent there, and the people who've worked in the markets and they know what they're doing. We had to educate them on the entitlement process. How quickly can you get back up to speed in building the kind of housing that we're going to need? And they didn't have a clue about how difficult and time-consuming that is. So, well-intentioned, but we have our work cut out for us.
Doug, you and I have talked in the past about the strong fundamentals and the increase in demographics that are favoring apartment owners. How should policymakers keep in mind the anticipated increase in renters as they look to reform the GSEs?
Well, the demographic changes that are happening and the household formation changes that are happening are not caught by too many policymakers yet, but they're beginning to understand it. And when you think about the fact that maybe 85% of the new households that are formed going forward are going to be other than married couples with children, they're going to want different kinds of housing choices. Now, there's a very prominent researcher who is estimating that up to half the housing units that are going to be built over the next 20, 25 years will have to be rental in order to accommodate that demand. And then you couple that with the fact that the vast majority of the housing that the multifamily industry produces is affordable to people at 100% of area median income and below. So by definition, that's workforce housing. You have that demand that's out there, you have a lot of housing that has to be built, and you want affordable housing. So I think the policymakers need to keep all those in mind as they fix the single-family problem. Don't discredit the multifamily industry in that process.
And lastly, there's obviously a lot of noise and talk about this issue right now. Timetable, is this something we're going to see resolved soon, or are we looking for a long fight?
It's a long haul. Secretary Geithner estimated when they came out with the options that they presented with a 5 to 7 year estimate of the timetable to get this done. It's so complicated and I don't think that policymakers are going to want to disrupt this marketplace up to the election. So I think we'll see something happening start to happen in 2013.
Doug, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Great. And we'll be sure to keep an eye on the GSE reform at REIT.com. I'm Matt Bishart.